Oh, hello.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Coffee Class with Young Screenwriters. I am Alexie, and this is Adam. And today we're going to be breaking Bridesmaids, a comedy. And we haven't done too many straight comedies. This is one of our first. So, unfortunately, John probably can't make it today. He was driving back and ran into some snow. And yeah.
But he might drop in, who knows? But let's not hold our breath.
Yeah, there might be a surprise John visit at some point, but we shall see. So, Adam, what did you think of the movie?
I hadn't seen it since it originally came out, and I liked certain things a little less when I watched it initially.
Mm-hmm.
No, sorry, the other way around. I liked it more then than I did now. Like I thought the performers were all fantastic. It was perfectly cast. And I think it totally works. I just think that it's one of those great examples of being we were talking about before. And the obstacles in this movie are so good. And there's so much tension and conflict. But I think it succeeds more in terms of as a vehicle for jokes and great character interactions and great performances than necessarily a story I'm going to be remembering 10 years from now. 10 years old script. It's crazy.
Yep. And I think it was one of the first, one of the best-selling comedy starring women. It did something. It was very, very, very important for those reasons when it came out.
Political reasons for sure.
Yeah.
And I also think it's very enjoyable and good, and it's a lot better than the average American comedy, in terms of quality and performance. So I think it's important to look at these sort of projects to understand them, and because if you ever want to write a comedy, you have to read scripts like this and sort of see how how improvisation heavy certain scripts are versus others. I know a lot of the Judd Apatow, Will Ferrell American comedies from the 2000s are primarily improv driven. Will Ferrell, Anchorman, not barely a word from the script is on screen. What they would do is they'd set up 20 cameras in the room and just have them go at it, and then they'd cut it together.
Yeah, and this one had so many hilarious people in it that they could get away with doing a lot because they're all just so freaking funny. Kristen, Wiig, and Maya Rudolph, and just freaking.
Kristen, she wrote the movies, and obviously, I want to see her new movie.
Which one?
The Barb movie.
I don't know.
It's an amazing trailer. I was like, oh, okay, I'll watch that.
Yeah, I remember when this came out the first time I watched it, I thought it was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. And I feel like it got compared. When did The Hangover come out? Because I felt like this was kind of
This came out around the same time. Barb and Star. That looks so funny. That's coming out right now, and she wrote it and is starring in it.
Oh, well, there we go. You have to check that out too. Yeah, I remember that this kind of felt like an all-women version of Hangover in a way, in terms of it was kind of it's not the same movie at all, but it was kind of I remember being talked about in that way forever ago. And I don't know how that comparison holds up. Hangover was something else.
I saw it once. I think the characters were a lot weaker in The Hangover, and I think that the performances were a lot weaker. But I think the ideas were funnier. It was more conceptually
it was more outrageous.
Yes, it was more outrageous.
I guess it was still I guess the comparison is Bachelor Party, right? So I guess it does have more parallels than I thought it did. I forgot about that small detail.
I don't think The Hangover is aged as well. That would be my gut.
No.
And the sequels especially not.
No.
What's her name? Melissa McCarthy said that they'll never, ever, 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 ever do a Bridesmaid sequel.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because she said she just does not believe they could do something funnier.
Oh, probably not. No, I freaking love Melissa McCarthy though. I will watch anything she wants to do. But yeah, it felt like Hangover was definitely more the much more outrageous, less grounded version of Bridesmaids. And I think that's part of why I liked Bridesmaids, was because it felt like a little bit more grounded, but was just super funny.
It was very grounded. So do you want to break the movie?
Yeah, let's do this.
All right.
Awesome. All right, so I shared the tent pole in the chat. I can post it again. It should also be in the description of the video. But yeah, so the protagonist is Annie. She is in her mid-30s. She works at a jewelry shop and absolutely hates it. She lives in Milwaukee. Her normal world, she'd started a dream bakery some point before the movie starts. She started it during a recession. She lost everything, and her savings, her boyfriend, lost it all. And now she has to walk past this abandoned store on a regular basis. She lives in an apartment with these two siblings that are really weird, and she can barely afford it. And when we meet her, she's in this relationship with Ted, who is just a complete tool. And we get the vibe that she wants something a little bit more from Ted, but Ted is just completely a tool. He's not interested at all. And it's just casual for him. We see that, like, even in this opening scene of her with Ted, we see that she's someone who is okay with relationships that don't treat her well, which is something I think is very related to her flaw. She's not necessarily looking for someone to treat her with kindness. She is kind of like open to this conflict and relationship, and not necessarily seeing herself as someone who deserves people to treat her well. Very quickly, we get to the inciting incident, which is her best friend, Lillian, Maya Rudolph, tells her that she just got engaged. At first, she's a little, Annie's a little bit shocked, and it's kind of like, what does this mean for us? And then Maya Rudolph says that she wants Annie to be her maid of honor. And that is what kicks the movie into motion. Something a bit, I guess, structurally unusual is that she doesn't have a super, super tangible objective in terms of like what you might see and like get the whatever. But I believe that her objective is give her best friend the most amazing wedding as her maid of honor. So that's her goal, is to get to the wedding as the maid of honor. And her objective in that is that Lillian's her motivation is that Lillian's her best friend and she wants the world for her. Very soon after, we go to the engagement party where we meet the cast of characters who are going to be on this movie with in the second act, including Helen, who is the perfect bridesmaid and is a new friend of Lillian and clearly wants to replace Annie as the maid of honor and best friend and just take over for her altogether. She's not like outwardly aggressive, but there's just immediately they do not like each other. Annie is not about this. Helen does not like her. They both want to be Lillian's number one. We meet other bridesmaids like Rita, who is long married and has kids who kind of treat her like crap. We meet Becca, who is Kimmy Schmidt. She's the newlywed. We meet Megan, who's super intense and goes after whatever she wants. And we get to know all the characters better, and immediately there's that conflict right out of the gate where Annie and Helen are competing to give the best speech at the engagement party. And Lillian asks them to please be kind. So this is the new world that they have together. In this new world, she's fighting with Helen to create the best wedding for Lillian and to be the most important person. Right after the really awkward engagement party, she is making fun of Helen in the car and gets pulled over by Officer Rhodes. Officer Rhodes is this Irish cop guy who recognizes her from her bakery, and he's just kind of like a dopey, kind guy who ends up letting her off for her broken tail lights because he likes her cake, and they connect. Anyway, so that's a little B story happening in the background. He's obviously much nicer than Ted to her. So Annie's leading the wedding party, and she's going to take everyone to a meal before they go try on some dresses. They go eat some Brazilian meat, and Annie is like, trust me on this, it's going to be great. Helen is super hesitant. She won't even eat the meat. At every single obstacle, Helen is opposing Annie. So first it seems like everything's great. Everyone really likes the food. They're going for the dress fitting, and Annie forgot to get a reservation. Naturally, Helen, the antagonist, knows the owner and gets them in. Inside of the place, there's all these other conflicts where there's a difference between, like, the price point is an issue of conflict for them. Annie wants to try to get a cheaper dress. Helen is like, get this fancy one. It'll look good because I'm also getting you that dress from Paris. Helen is just kind of seemingly almost effortlessly one-upping Annie at every single point. And then to make matters worse, everybody but Helen has horrendous food poisoning from the Brazilian restaurant. There's a wild scene where everyone is super, super sick and everyone but Helen, and it creates like a massive, like, Annie just hates Helen at this point. So any hope that they had of easing things over, Annie is just super resentful of Helen and upset that she messed that up. After the whole food poisoning debacle, Annie's trying to plan the bachelorette party. She thinks of something super personal for Lillian. They've been friends forever. She wants to do it at her parents' lake house. But Helen has already gone behind her back and convinced everyone that they should go to Vegas. So Annie's already getting kind of overridden by Helen, who's trying to usurp her as the maid of honor. They get on the plane. Annie is terrified of flying. That's another obstacle, and is too proud to let Helen be nice to her and buy the first class ticket. So she's going to be alone in the back. And of course, she's next to a woman who is also scared of flying. She takes some drugs and alcohol from Helen to try to ease the fear of flying, which ends up giving her hallucinations, causes a massive freak out on the plane, and she becomes the reason why they have to emergency land the plane in Wyoming, not even getting all the way to Las Vegas, and take a bus back to Milwaukee. This is when we hit the midpoint. If you were looking at the timestamp, this is like exactly at 65 minutes into the movie or 65 pages into the script. They're on the bus. Everyone's defeated. Annie's humiliated because she just got them all kicked off the plane. And Lillian sits next to her and is basically like, I think it's best if Helen takes over as the maid of honor. And Annie is obviously completely devastated, but there's not much she can say at this point. She's ruined a lot of everything up to this point. And she tells Lillian, I just want you to be happy. And Lillian tells her, I think this would make me happy, being that Helen takes over, which is just such a crushing friendship blow. So now we move past the midpoint into the second half of Act 2. The roles have changed. She's no longer the maid of honor. She's lost to Helen and is now on the fringes of the wedding party. She's feeling down, so she goes back to her B plot. She calls Rhodes, the nice cop, and ends up hooking up with him. And then in the morning, he's being really nice to her and is got her a whole bunch of baking stuff, and she freaks out. And this is kind of going back to her flaw of not necessarily accepting kindness for herself and relationships. So she sees that he's trying to do something nice. she completely freaks out and leaves and won't talk to him again. She tries to call Lillian to confide in her about what's going on with the cop, and she won't answer her phone because she's too busy. She's feeling super alone. She ends up getting a package in the mail, and it's from Helen, inviting her to the bridal shower, which was Annie's original idea, Paris themed, with a butterfly in it, just the icing on the cake. So Helen is now completely taking Annie's spot, taking her ideas, being the person, being Lillian's number one friend. She's pissed. She goes to her job. She gets fired for telling people off. When she goes back home, her roommates kick her out. They say they don't want a roommate anymore. She moves in with her mom. Everything is completely going downhill from her. And then finally, we're about to hit the peak of the downhill slope. She goes to the bridal shower, and at first everything seems like she's kind of pissed that it seems so good, but it's mostly fine. She gives Lillian a really, really thoughtful gift connected to their past. And of course, Helen one-ups her in this super obnoxious way, pretending like she couldn't get her a gift and then giving her tickets to Paris, which again was what Annie knew that she wanted. And Annie completely loses it at this ultimate test. She completely freaks out, starts throwing the chocolate fountain, breaking things, smashing the giant heart cookie, and moving into Act 3, she's destroying everything, having a huge fit, and then Lillian tells her, "You're kicked out of the wedding. Like, not only are you not my maid of honor anymore, but you're not, like, don't bother coming." Completely crushed and leaves. So now they're at the beginning of Act 3, and her all is lost low point, where her flaw has pushed her to, like, losing absolutely everything in her life. Her car gets hit. Rhodes and Ted show up. Rhodes, the normally nice guy, tells her off and is like, "You're irresponsible and you need to start, like, it was so easy to fix things and you chose not to." And Annie's kind of just not in a place to hear it, and she's going back with Ted, and Ted's being a tool as usual, and she dumps him. So now she's, like, alone in the middle of nowhere, and she ends up going to her mom's house, and then that's when Megan comes over. And this is why I think Megan's the mentor, and I think that Adam has a different thought, that maybe it's the cop, and I could see it going both ways. But in her lowest moment, Megan comes over and tells her a story about how she was always authentically herself, and how that helped her and encourages Annie to, to dig deep and keep pushing. And so Annie does. She goes and gets her taillights fixed. She tries to make up with Rhodes. It's not working, but she's trying. And then finally, all or nothing, Helen shows up at her door, or the antagonist shows up at her door begging for help. And Annie agrees. So right out of the gate, Lillian is missing. This is a catastrophic failure. The day of the wedding, she wasn't even going to go. And now Helen's roped her into finding Lillian, who is gone. Rhodes would be a great resource for this as a cop, but he's not speaking to her. So she does all these crazy things to try to get his attention. That's her decisive action. She's really going to try to ask somebody else for help, which is out of character for her. So she's asking him for help. Finally, she gets his attention, and they track the phone. Turns out she's been at her apartment this whole time, and Annie's going to go and goes in alone. So Helen's not coming. Annie's going to go in alone and try to convince her. They have a great heart-to-heart moment. Annie convinces Lillian to go to her wedding, helps her fix the dress. It's a really cute moment. When unexpected success. And then now the resolution. She's going to go to this wedding. Annie is the maid of honor. At least she's standing in the spot for the maid of honor. And it's a great wedding. And Helen got Wilson Phillips to perform. Annie and Helen and Lillian might hang out in the future. Everybody's super happy. and it ends with Rhodes picking up Annie. They've made up, and they're going to go on a date, or he's going to arrest her. It's unclear. And that is the end of the movie.
Hey, great job.
Thanks. There we go.
I agree with you that he's not. I think it's more fun to think of him as more of like an more like a reward. Like, oh, you get a guy who's not Ted.
Yeah.
That's I feel like that's the way to kind of played out, and I see that's what Kristen Wiig was trying to write. I don't know. I feel like it's really about a woman. It's a story about her friendships, with her fellow bridesmaids and and her friends. So I don't think that certain aspects of like the male relationship, specifically the scene where he's like, "Bake."
Yeah.
I don't think that is aged as well as maybe some of the other aspects of the story.
Well, a lot of it didn't age well, like him being a cop and, him.
Listen, if he didn't have that sweet, sweet Irish accent, it would play a lot worse.
Oh, yeah. And I read that he wasn't even supposed to, he was going to be an American cop, but then they were endeared by his natural accent, so they kept it. I'm like, thank God, that's the only thing that saved.
Yeah, he was. It's definitely a red flag when he got the ingredients, and it was sort of but again, I see functionally what they were trying to do. Like they were trying to compare and contrast him, but I feel like there's a version of that that's less cringy.
Yeah, I think that it was supposed to be written that she was turning down something nice. It wasn't supposed to be that it was cringy, but it was. You know what I mean? Like within the world of the story, it was supposed to be that he was just like doing a nice thing for her. This
is what John would call I don't know if he'd say this, but this is my interpretation of John's analysis of this would be like, this was an arbitrary choice. We need to get our new guy.
Oh,
we need to set that up. Like, we have Ted, the shitty guy, and then we have it seems like a little like they're not necessarily digging for like the best possible version. It was more of like a low hanging fruit idea that like survived into the film.
The only trade off really of him being a cop was that he got to catch her at a low point because he was pulling her over when she was sure. And then the other benefit was that when she was missing, when Lillian was missing, his copness came in handy. But I don't think that was enough of a
my problem isn't that he was a cop. It's that he had like some red flag toxic behavior and they propped him, and his existence in the story was kind of arbitrary.
Yeah, no,
like,
that's what I mean.
It was like, at least he's Irish,
Yeah, like at least he's Irish. Yeah.
Yeah, Theo said it exactly that. Like the romance felt kind of thrown in.
Yeah, it felt extra. Like I think that, and that could have been a 2011 movie where it's about women and they can't fathom it without men, without a love interest. So they need to be in there. Like I don't necessarily think that it helped anything.
No, I think it was the weakest link in the story. I mean, those moments felt the phoniest and the cheesiest and like the cringiest and the most like Hollywood, because it was just sort of tacked on, and it wasn't coming from the core situation and the promise of the story, which is a story about friendship, and it's a story about self-worth, and it's that story about choosing the best version of your life and like having hope to like choose kindness, like that sort of stuff. Like that's has nothing to do with whether you decide to stop fucking John Hamm and screw some Irish cop instead. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I think that seemed like a producer's requirement at the time. Like,
yeah, it was definitely like, you can't have a comedy with all these women without a love story.
Yeah, exactly. Like it wasn't something that like yes, they ended up using it. Like they integrated it just enough that you couldn't cut those scenes without like being like, what's happening here? But only barely. Like you didn't really need John Hamm or the Irish cop.
It definitely was thrown in because it's true or not true, but at the time that producers believed that women wouldn't go to a show if there wasn't romance in it.
Yep.
That was the belief. Right. I don't think that's true necessarily today, but I think it was kind of true back then. Like, I know a lot of like women, 45-year-old women in 2011 who like were like not interested if there wasn't like, you know, that
I don't know if that's the
this type of movie was sold.
I mean, I feel like maybe
not our generation. I mean, okay. Like I'm Gen X and baby boomers. Like my grandmother would not be interested in a movie unless there was romance in it.
Grandmother.
She had these really racy, like romance bodice rippers that it was the first time I'd ever like read a sex scene or like been exposed to one. Was I was 8 years old. I was sleeping in one of their guest room. I remember picking up one of my grandmother's books, and it was pretty like racy stuff. So yeah,
8-year-old Adam just like.
So what? I guess what I'm saying is when my grandmother's generation were like part of the big buying public, and I don't know, people like her, like she went because she wanted to get that in those movies. So I feel like that's where the arbitrary decision about like the false belief that, oh, all women's stories have to, because there are a lot of horny grandmas out there. Yeah, I'm derailing this completely.
No, but it's fair. So I think, like, do you have to include a romantic B story in every movie? No, but I do think that still is going to be, if you sell to a studio, that still is going to be a studio note. To this day, for the most part, if you're doing something that's like a bigger budget, you probably are going to get the studio note. Can't we like add in a love interest?
It's because a lot of people, and maybe they're not writers, you know, who analyze things. A lot of people really like romance.
Yeah, I mean, but it's like it's a very studio thing to be like, you know what, this is funny, but let's add a man or two.
Yeah, but you know, I feel like there's definitely a push now to be like examining like, well, why do we need that? Like you shouldn't have like add like a guy for romance subplot unless that's like part of making the story better. You know, like I think stories get hurt when you start arbitrarily making decisions either for political reasons or for apolitical reasons, like, oh, you have to have the romance subplot, or oh, you have to have X, Y, and Z. And it's like, no. What is the story? What's the best version of the story? And how can you choose a story that's worth telling that we haven't seen before?
Yeah, and like in this case, one of the things that was hardest about analyzing this movie is that her flaw, the emotional core, like it felt like it was almost a friendship movie. But then you kept having these other things. Like
it wanted to be a friendship movie.
Yeah.
But they made this arbitrary choice.
To incorporate these other like romantic things, and it was pulling it in different directions. I think that this is an example of one that would have been stronger if they had just said F that and focused on the friendship element.
Because they give so much emotional bandwidth in Act 3 to the romance choice.
Yeah.
And it's weird. It actually kind of, the more I talk about it, the more I'm not a fan of that choice. Because everything else, the movie, the central gravity of the movie, why people liked the movie is the friendships and the focus on the friendships and the conflict that came out of the friendships. And then suddenly to sort of have it like all of this emotional bandwidth in Act 1 and Act 2, go to her love life, it just feels kind of like irrelevant.
It does. So Abdullah said, should we add it or wait to get the note? You should write the best movie and then...
Yeah, just make the best story. Like it comes out of the story. Like if you don't have the internal sense and discernment to look at what the promise of the story is and like what you really are saying with it, rather than just making arbitrarily. You can make arbitrary choices because people get fixated on things. They'll be like, oh, I had this idea in this notebook and that's amazing. You know, I think there are a lot of Stephen King has a great saying, is the writer's notebook is the best way to immortalize bad ideas, right? Like, because they're just like arbitrary bubbles. You have to go deep to the core of what is the story and what is the best thing of that. And you aren't going to forget. I'm not going against notebooks. I think they're great. But like my point is those arbitrary little thoughts. Kill it.
Yeah. So this is a good question, which is, I feel like it must have been in one of the drafts. Joshua said, could her reopening the bakery at the end fill the plot role that the cop plays, the sign that she's gotten back on track?
Yeah, I hope that I was in an earlier draft.
I would be shocked if that was not a thought at some point, because they like, they swerved it. It was like why was it there, really? Like, there was no payoff for her being good at baking. Like, was there? The only payoff was that she made that freaking, like, the carrot cake and then the raccoons ate it and there was one joke about it. Like, that's not a payoff for making her this character who's passionate about that. Like, it felt like a completely missed opportunity. Yeah, and I think it's like, I think having her just like straight up, well, first off, if they lost you at the closing scene, then you've already been there for the whole movie, so there is that to consider. But it's like, they can do it. You can do something that makes sense like that, but do it in a surprising way. Like, she could, it's not necessarily that we're saying, yes, open back up the cake baby, whatever that place was exactly, and have her be there and be happy. It's like, think of a different way to give us the satisfaction of seeing that matter without going for the obvious choice, if that makes sense. Like what Sandra's saying, like, I thought that she was going to make some awesome cupcakes for the wedding or make the wedding cake or something. Like,
it was weird that it didn't. This is a great point from Theo, that they wrote the script in 6 days and had no idea what they were doing. I believe it.
Yeah,
like,
I believe
this
it.
kind of comes that you might be like, well, why is there structure in place? The answer is, you can't help but have structure if you're telling a good story. Like, human beings think in circles. Like, we just do. This is how stories shape. Remember, it's not prescriptive. It's not like you have to hit these beats. It's descriptive. It's like, this is what's been done. And if you want to tell a great story, you can use these tools to make your story better.
Yeah, I think that there is. First off, clearly this film was like very funny, very financially successful. It worked. But like, if you were gonna try to like say this didn't exist and this was the first draft of a script you had in 2021, then I would, and I was the writer, I would be looking at, what is this about? And it's really about female friendship, and it's about, it's about like that rivalry between her and the best friend, trying to be like, what does it mean to be like a best friend to another friend? Like, it's something in that sphere. And so if I was going to keep this bakery thing, I would think about, how can that be more directly connected to the wedding? How can that be more directly connected to her objective as the maid of honor? And how can that be more directly connected to her emotional arc in terms of like the friendship, like her growth as being a friend? Because like, she starts off being a friend who's like very competitive, and in the end, I guess it seems like she's trying to end up in a place where she's willing to be friends with Helen if it means something to Lillian.
But she doesn't really prove it in a way that's totally relevant. It's the love story derails Act 3 a little bit. But I don't want to in any way say that, take away from the accomplishments of the film, because it's very funny and it has some amazing performances. And I think the parts that work really work.
Yeah, I think the thing is, like, I think
it's political.
It is political, but it was also good, and it was also 2011, and people were also looking for different things in movies, and like, it was really popular. People thought it was hilarious because it was really well acted. There was a lot of great like improv. It was a lot of really funny women, which was something that people hadn't seen in this way, especially in like mainstream stuff. And so that's why it was special. And I think we're just critiquing it from like a 2021 lens, which is important to remember. And we're also coming at it from like the angle of like, say you wrote this and you weren't Kristen Wiig, like Kristen Wiig writing this and knowing that she's going to star in it is different too. Let's see.
Also, just a side note, when you start meeting people who are members of the Academy who vote, you immediately lose all romance and respect for like Academy Award. You're like, oh wait, that guy's one of the voters? Oh shit. Oh man. I don't know. Growing up in LA, that there are a lot of just a bunch of people, you know, and it's so political. Like it's literally like they vote. Sometimes they just vote for the only movie they've heard of, or the only movie. Oh yeah, my friend was in that this year.
There was that whole thing where people were openly saying, what was it? Get Out. That people were like, I think it was Get Out, where people were gonna vote for it, but then they found out that it like had like race relations and people got like their feelings hurt.
But
so they
won.
said that, huh?
He won.
I know, but I'm saying that there was like this whole thing. There was like, I remember like reading a lot of articles about like this controversy that like people liked it until some of the Oscar voter people, the Academy members, found out that it had like racial undertones, even though it wasn't that under, and then got mad. And then
enough people voted him though for him to win the Academy Award, not for writing. So but writing's different. Like it's easier. Like maybe the controversy was about it didn't get a Best Picture nomination. That
could have been it. It was something though, but it's just like it just goes to tell you that like it's not that these people are necessarily like actually the supreme deciders of art.
For every David Fincher that is voting, there are like 40 old guys in Hollywood who just haven't even watched half of the movies.
Yeah, Samantha said, I heard someone say they let their kid fill out their ballot. Yeah. It's like
total bullshit.
It's like, do I want one? Yeah, I want an Oscar. But like there is some like it's like it's not
political. You have to basically campaign really hard, and the people who win are the people who have the most soft power typically and positioned. Like I don't know, don't want to get into it, but
it's worth knowing that it's not like, you know,
it's not like this holy grail of like, wow, they've got an Academy Award nomination, therefore it's amazing. That's not necessarily true.
No.
Let's go back to this question. So
yeah,
like I mean, this is 2011, you know?
Yeah.
Did this movie pass the Bechdel test? I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they were talking about, I mean, like even
no, it did, but like Vegas. Not as much as it should have.
No, like yeah, and also the Bechdel test is like it is a minimum. It is like
like what I would want out of a film like this is it to like pass for at least 70% of the dialogue, and this does not pass that level. That being said, I did think John Hamm was fantastic.
Oh, they were all great. Like
everybody did a great job.
It was very well acted and it was very funny. Some of the writing choices aren't necessarily what I would want from a movie now, but I see why they were made.
But even then, like it wasn't the best version. That like I think you can say like when a story is of a piece, something John says all the time. What it means is that like what the film is trying to say, the theme of the movie, the promise of the movie, the fun of the movie, the thing that makes it interesting, are all of those elements are working together and are coherent. And at the end of the day, when you're starting a story, the moment things start to like be good on the page is the moment you figured out what this thing is. I know that's kind of vague, but like that's why when I work on projects, I want to figure out the flaw, inner need, dynamic of the protagonist as the first thing, and then work backwards from there. Because if that's going to change, because like everything is built off of that.
Mm-hmm. So this was a point that Tariq brought up before. It makes sense to me for a film on the theme of importance of friendships to show her other relationships for comparison. I think, yes. Also, though, they spent, if this is about friendship, then a lot of time at critical story moments were given to things that aren't friendship. Like, you only have so many, in a 90-minute film, there's only so much time you have. And like her in the third act, baking the carrot cake for the guy, for the cop. And like that being like one of the things like where she's doing things for him in that low moment, like where she's getting her tail light fixed and she's baking him the cake at the all is lost, that's like what she's doing to look like she resolved her flaw. That's where I think it's like getting derailed because of the secondary relationships. Like if this was about, like, that's where I think the story could have been more streamlined to make it more about the friendships in particular. I don't think it's bad to have the other relationships there. And like, also, it's not necessarily a bad choice that this happened. Like, it worked as a film, but it's just in that moment specifically, it pulled us off the friendship track in a way that I don't think was like thematically helpful. I don't know. Maybe
glad that you said it exactly as I would. You know, you want if the all is lost is about one thing, you don't want to make it about something else.
Let me share this, okay, just so everyone can.
And Adam, please go a little bit more about the process. So in writing the feature, the course we have, Alexie and I go into really in depth on flaw and inner need and how we work on it. But just to recap, the entire idea of a story, the entire theme of a story, ideally speaking, in most movies, is the inner need. It's the inner need to flaw transformation, and it's the philosophical belief of the protagonist, like. And that's when it's best. It's not just a characteristic of, oh, they're selfish, they're selfless. It's like, what is the specific emotional kernel that causes their selfishness to be selfishness? Like, what is the lie they tell themselves? What is the truth they have to learn? And finding that out changes everything, because then it's like the movie writes itself almost once you found that kernel of like, okay, who is this person? What are they going to learn? Where are they going to be at the end? And philosophically, what are the beliefs of the characters? Like, for example, if the movie's about like, let's just say that somebody's selfish because they believe that what's a good inner need flaw for selfishness? Like, oh, I don't feel like I'm other people are worth spending time on because, I'll only be hurt in the long run. Like, maybe to believe that somebody has a false belief that if they, if they self-sacrifice for other people, they'll only be hurt and change. And maybe their inner need is about, I can sacrifice for other people and I don't necessarily have to be hurt, like being open. So you could have a person who's closed off for X, Y, and Z, but like going down to like a really, like a sentence that's like, what is the belief that's false? Mm-hmm. And then put that as the emotional kernel of the story. And if you find whatever that is, Pixar movies do this better than anybody else in terms of a very clear philosophical beliefs, like about what the characters, who the characters are. And most importantly, this is how you make your characters not passive and active. So if you have a character who believes something, belief is an active attribute. It's not like passive. You can't have somebody passively believe something. So if you believe something, you're going to go after and live and make decisions based on the belief. That's kind of what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Is that it, Alexie?
Yeah, I think it is. It's like, yeah, it's tough. The inner need, the whole movie, like, movies are, it's like it's two tracks laid on top of each other, right? It's the physical track of them going after a tangible objective, and then it's the emotional track of them resolving a flaw and going after their inner need. And the more those two things can be joined together so that everything is about that, and so that those things are interwoven so that they can't get to their objective without resolving their flaw, or that their objective is contingent on their flaw, and then in the end they realize they don't need their objective. It's the stronger the film ends up feeling, the stronger the catharsis at the end ends up being. So yeah, I think that was a good way to put it.
Our podcast, we just did a episode on inner need and flaw. We talk about this in depth, and that should come out on Monday.
Yeah, was that our solo episode?
That was our solo episode without John.
John, he's been, as everyone knows,
he's a busy guy.
It's been very winter stormy, and he was traveling around a little bit with family. So, yeah, but yeah, check out that episode when it comes out on Monday if you want to hear a little bit more.
So let's talk about Bridesmaids for a minute. So do you have the script?
Yep.
I just want to sort of show people the script a little bit and just comment. I don't necessarily have a specific scenes I want to talk about. Did this movie have to be 2 hours long? What do you cut? I don't know if I would cut anything. I would have replaced things. I would have, like we said earlier, I would have made Act 3 about something different.
Like, I don't think that, like, starting with Ted was the most helpful thing.
Yeah, no. But like, let's just scan through this for a minute. Go to the middle of it. Just scan through. I want everybody to look. This is how a comedy should look. Do you see how little narrative description there is?
Mm-hmm.
And how effective and sparse it is. It's all about character interaction. Comedies are about characters talking to each other. So, and all of the narrative description is a means to just sort of orient you enough to know what's happening when people do talk to each other. Like interior Annie's apartment, thus. Annie walks into her crappy 2-bedroom apartment. A woman in her 20s, Bryn, sits on the couch on TV. Like nothing else. We don't need to know. Like it just sort of tells you the bare minimum of what you need to know to orient yourself. Comedies, modern screenplays, if you can really make it all about the event of a scene, things that are happening, and it is clean and efficient, minimalistic. When you start like putting screenplay jargon like insert, smash cut, transition, you're just killing people. They just hate it. It's horrible. What people want to read.
So,
yeah.
Abdullah said, aren't talking heads a turnoff? I'd argue that this isn't, because they're constantly, like, even though it's not overburdened with narrative description, you're constantly tracking. Like, there's never, like, streams of dialogue. Like, look, like, things are moving.
Also, Abdullah, aren't you a huge Aaron Sorkin fan? Aaron Sorkin scripts are just all dialogue.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, but like things are moving. It's like, I think things feel like talking heads when you're staying in one spot and you're talking about doing things and you're not actually doing things. But all of these are like, people are moving, people are like going after things. And in these scenes, people have like their want, do, get that Adam talks about.
Yep.
And it creates conflict, and then the humor arises out of that conflict. But like, this is probably like the longest I've seen them go on without a break in the action, and it's like a page, and it's not common. So I mean, I think that they dodge talking heads.
No, I mean, like it's like actually the ideal screenplay has as little narrative description as possible. The narrative description has a function. It is to orient the reader. But honestly, producers tend to skip long narrative description. They just go right to the dialogue. So if you can make it more dialogue, I can give a quick top 5 things readers say. So if any of you haven't taken our free course, Writing the Scene, it's like an hour of video footage, but like in module 4, I have a few videos on this, on specifically on readability, and that goes all into like what people look for, what the ideal kind of reading format in 2020, 2021 that like that's producers tend to like. But just off the top of my head, white space on the page. This has a lot of white space. It's a psychological thing. Like if you have a first page of your screenplay and it's all black narrative description, insert, smash cut, and just big blocks of text, they're going to throw your script out. They're not going to read it. That's an excuse. That's a red flag. It's an excuse to read it. Second thing is lots, like not using line breaks to like help with readability. Like for example, right here is like a lot of beginning writers would have kept that Annie smooths her dress, self-conscious, in that first paragraph by breaking those lines into paragraphs. They're different like thoughts. It just makes it more readable. But just have more dialogue. Unless you have something that's very hard to understand without narrative description, opt to like condense, clarify, get rid of, focus on it. I'm sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but my point is, imagine you were, I've done script coverage in internships before. Imagine you're this person and you have to get through like 30 scripts in a week and you have to give notes on them. You are not reading these in depth. You are skimming them. And the stuff that has great character interaction that shows like story happening are the ones that hook you and you want to read to the end. The ones that like start with just like lots of black text, lots of confusing orientate, like the narrative description, the thing being what's supposed to orient you to understand what's happening is in itself confusing. If that's happening, fuck. And people like in that position who are doing like lots of scripts, they're going to find a reason not to read yours. Sorry, I go more into depth on in writing the scene. I highly recommend. It's free.
Yeah, you can check that out.
So another sort of takeaway here. Comedies are a lot like plays, I've noticed, in terms of like how they read. It really is just about the dialogue, people interacting. Aaron Sorkin was a playwright first and foremost. I think he's a great example. Like his screenplays are very dialogue, character interaction heavy. Just use the bare minimum narrative description, you know.
So, real quick, another thing that you could do, something to take from this too, is a very small thing, but it's an important thing. There's a ton of characters in this. Like in the wedding party, there's a lot of characters, and all their names are very easily distinguishable on the page. Like you have Lillian, starts with an L, Annie, you have Rita, Becca, you know, and then Helen, you know, and then all these other people that don't matter. But all of them are very different looking names on the page. And that seems small, but if you're reading it and someone's name is Annie and someone else's name is Andy, you're going to get them confused. People are skimming your script. It's a thing that gets, you know, if someone's name was Annie and someone else's name was Allie, people skimming are going to confuse the characters. They're going to forget who they are. All these names are pretty short. They're like 2 syllables, basically. Lillian's a little longer, but not by much. You know what I mean? Like it's a very like short trick, and definitely would recommend it. And then on another practical level, you don't want long names because it's going to bump you onto other lines. Like if her name was like a triple name that you had to write out every single time, like Jennifer Lauren something something, it's going to bump you onto the next line. It's going to take up more space on the page by doing short names.
And so here's another thing. A lot of this dialogue is very bland, in my opinion. If you covered the character names, you wouldn't really be able to tell who was talking. The best screenplays tend to really have the word choice and the vocabularies of different characters being varied to themselves. And I feel like this film leveraged the personality of the actors in a way to make them really come off strong. Like that, this was a film that was made in the casting. Like you're totally right. Like people all sound kind of the same.
Yeah, exactly. You want to start and end with different letters, and we skim and we fill the inside. So yeah, you want to make sure that each of the names are very distinct. And then there's this people like screenplays that have protagonists whose name is something very short and kind of like sharp. Like I can't think of how to explain it, but like Zach is like one of those like short names that are like, you know, like a name that like has like a strong like consonant and is very short on the page.
Anglo-Saxon.
People, it's annoying, but it is what, for some reason in screenplays that kind of thing works.
So this is fantastic narrative description right here. They do a dumb, lovely gesture. A bad screenwriter would have, or I should say an undeveloped screenwriter would have specifically tried to like show us what that looked like. He flaps his hands in the air in a semicircle and it's, you know, shines in the moonlight, you know. Also, he looks like a strict math teacher. It communicates in the clearest way possible. What at the end of the day, you're communicating, right? Like what if you can find a better way to communicate something.
Yeah, I would agree with Michelle here. I think that I mean, like Kristen Wiig was writing this, and probably and she is also an actress who's very funny and could probably read these parts and understand how they could be played in a very dynamic, funny way. And that was definitely something taken into consideration here.
But if you were, I think we just did Juno recently, and Diablo Cody was just writing this in a vacuum, trying to get it made, right? She put a lot of effort and focus on making the dialogue just rip on the page.
Yeah, and each of the characters is very distinct.
Oh, and yeah. You could tell when Juno was talking if her name was covered up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like the thing about reading scripts and using them as a reference for yourself is that you can't ignore the context of where the script was created, as much as you want to. So when people say things like, well, Tarantino, that's always the go-to example. Well, Tarantino breaks this rule, or they do this, or in this script I saw this happen. You can't ignore the context in which the script was created. You writing your first spec before you've had something sell or be produced. It's not even just sell. It's actually before you've had a movie produced, you're playing a different ball game than writers and directors who've been produced multiple times. It's not necessarily fair, but it's a completely different game. And that's what Adam was talking about with Vacuum. Diablo Cody writing as an unproduced writer with no credits under her belt is different than Kristen Wiig writing as someone who's a known comedian, even though she was, I guess, probably not quite as big in 2011.
No. She everyone in Hollywood knew her because she was on SNL for so long. She was she wasn't just on SNL. She was somebody who killed it in everything. It's like if Kate McKinnon wrote a screenplay now.
Gotcha.
Everyone would read it,
Yeah.
Maybe a little less so because Kristen is so universally respected now.
But yeah, I mean, it's it's hard. If you're gonna look at a screenplay and make your spec similar to it, you want to be looking at other specs.
Yeah, that's you got to be looking at the blacklist. You don't be reading what Aaron Sorkin wrote. Don't be reading what these big of names are doing. Read what made Blacklist last year. Yeah.
And it's, not don't read it, but don't read it and think this is what I need to be writing right now.
But if you are only reading produced famous auteur screenwriters, you're really shooting yourself in the foot competitively. If you're only reading that and you're not reading unproduced spec scripts that are doing well, you're really, really missing out. You need to not even necessarily to be oh, I need to know what's out there. That's a terrible decision, but to sort of know okay, producers liked this year.
Yep.
This is my competition. It's kind of it isn't, you're trying to enter into a business without researching your competition. The people who made Blacklist last year are your competition. They're like you. They're trying to break in. They're trying to get stuff made you, and you want to see what's working to know what not to do and what to do.
You're not competing with
Aaron
the people. No, you're not competing with Aaron Sorkin. You're not competing with Spielberg. You're not competing with those people right now. You're competing with the other people who want to be on the blacklist. And it's a whole different thing. So I would highly recommend trying to get a hold of some blacklist scripts from this year and reading even just the first 10 pages, see how they open it, see how they control white space, see how they pull you into the story very quickly, see how much dialogue is happening there. Just pay attention to the kinds of things that they do in those scripts, and that's going to be the most helpful thing for you.
I read about the first 10 pages of about 7 or 8 of them last year.
Yep.
And it was mostly to just sort of be okay, how did these start? It was because the first 10 pages are the most important part, because that's what hooked people. How did the best of these hook people? And first of all, I look on Reddit and be okay, what were the best blacklist scripts? And everybody has their opinion. Everybody hated or not hated, but had very strong opinions about the gender-swapped American Psycho ripoff last year.
Wow, rip off.
No,
Yeah.
no, ripoff is basically like she's like, oh, I forget what the name of the script was, but it's basically American Psycho, rich white girl who just murders a bunch of people, you know.
Okay, I think that there was some hate for that though because of reasons that were not necessarily.
I think it was very, very gory and disturbing.
Yeah,
and had like a lot of very strange story choices. But I don't think it wasn't. I don't know what specifically people were talking about. But like, my point is that was the most talked about one, and I read the first 8 pages of that one because I'm like, wow, I want to read why everybody's talking about this. And I was like, wow, that's pretty gruesome.
Yeah, I mean, but a lot of people liked it. And then so here's the other thing about Blacklist though too is like, remember when Cosmo was here and he was talking about how when he was trying to get his stuff on the blacklist, how political that game was. You don't just send your scripts to people and then like wake up on the blacklist.
No.
You know, it's like you're sending it to people intentionally. And then you're following up with them and saying, hey, don't forget me now that you're voting on blacklist stuff. Like it's a whole thing. If you all come to, if you all are on the Discord, we can probably share some blacklist scripts.
Yeah, it can be hard sometimes because often those links get killed once scripts get bought. For example, studios try to lock down unproduced drafts around. So sometimes like those Google Drives that have like 30 drafts in them get killed. But
yeah, you got to move.
Not. We have one, right?
We do.
Last year. Yeah.
No, we had a lot. Yeah. So yeah, just come onto the Discord and
you type into Google blacklist PDFs 2020, you'll probably find something.
It's like, it tends to be a Reddit thing. There's always like a brief moment on Reddit where somebody's like, here's everything. Take it now.
That's it.
Like,
I don't know if the link we have is still alive.
I don't know either. It's like when the blacklist comes out, go on Reddit because somebody will say, I have them all. And you snag it.
That's why I try to read through them on the weekend. I find out about them. It's
yeah, you got to move quick because people don't want them circulating that long. But like Cosmo couldn't share his scripts now because now they're like
in production.
They're like in development and in production and stuff. So it's you got to move fast on those. But you can definitely access them from a few years ago. But then again, taste changes so fast that you're going to benefit most from
last year.
Most recent. Yeah. Let's see.
Does the membership, remember the blacklist is different than blacklist?
There's two blacklists that are, I think it's run by similar people, but it's different things. So one is
Alexie, I have a link. I have all the scripts, PDFs.
Yeah, that's what I thought we did too. Yeah. So come on to the Discord and we'll or
at least I have about 20 of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on the Discord we can like DM it to you. I don't think we should probably post it.
We should, yeah, exactly.
So anyway, there's that if you want to check some out. But so there's the blacklist and then there's like a different blacklist. But so what it is that a while ago, a reader, I guess, wanted to create an informal list of what was everybody's favorite scripts of the year. And it was just like an email chain. It was like, hey, everybody, like all these execs, tell me what your favorite ones were. And I'll put together a list of like what were the best unproduced scripts. So the qualifications are like that it was not produced yet. So it was something that you read that hasn't yet been made. And so people would email this guy back and like vote for their favorites. And you'd put together a list and send it out. Over time, this became something that meant more. You know, it started off like very casual, but then it became something that meant more. And it's a little bit more organized now. And now it's something that people hold in high regard. But really all it was like it started off in this very casual way. Now there's this site called The Blacklist, which is which is different, but like connected, but not. And basically you can pay money, which is not a small amount. It's like, I don't know, like $40 a month or something, which is not like nothing, to have them host your script. So they have your script on their website, and technically people searching can find it. And if it's being hosted there and they're also holding a contest, you can submit your script to the contest.
And you can also pay them to rate your screenplay. But then that rating is tied to it, and it's a crapshoot. Like I remember Avi was saying, the script that did well on the Nichols got like a mediocre score for on the blacklist. I'm like, so it's kind of grain of salt,
If you get like an 8 out of 10, then you get like more free reviews. And a lot of times people get the 8 out of 10 and then they go post on Reddit freaking out like, should I even get those other reviews? Because if you get those other reviews, you might get like a 5,
bad one, and then that totally kills you. Yeah,
and then it pulls down your overall ranking. So it's just, I would treat that blacklist as like yet another contest, like Screencraft or like Austin or something. Like it's like another one of those things.
I think it can help some people, but it's more about, it's like a luck thing, So
it's like
the other contests are a better way because you don't have to deal with like the social media aspect of it,
Yeah. If it doesn't go well, you just kind of
like submit for Austin, submit for Screencraft, submit for like Nichols, that sort of stuff,
Yeah. The blacklist, though, they do host good contests, but just paying money to have your script on there is not necessarily doing much for you. If that's all you do is pay money to have them hold it, that's not going to move your script forward. You would need to like see if they're doing fellowships. They tend to have like 3 at a time that you can submit to, and you won't qualify for every single one because it'll be like a film one, a TV one, and then like something random. Anyway, that's a story about blacklist. But getting on the blacklist will get you a lot of attention, but it's not enough in and of itself to sell the script. It's usually enough to get you attention, but yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, it's important to read screenplays is really the takeaway.
Yeah, read scripts. Do joining contests really help up and coming screenwriters break in?
So it depends on the contest. There are about 4 to 5 contests that can make your career really, like if you win the Nichols, you get in the top 10 or top 15, about 600 producers will reach out to you.
Yep.
Like that's real.
Avi made it to semis and got a lot of traction on his script. But it's more for like getting like conversations, being like, hey, I'm a Nichols finalist. Yeah,
say that to somebody will read your script.
Yeah. I mean, like I did semis at Austin and it was like notable. Like I had a few people reach out. They were like, oh, this log line is like cool. Like, can you send me the script? Nothing came of it, but it was something that was like notable. And then now if we're like using that as a sample, we can say it was like a semifinalist at Austin and people are like, oh, that helps a little bit for like open writing assignments. I got my rep. I like met the guy who became my rep through a contest, but it was a small contest. It was like, it was a contest at NYU. And that was the one like where I won the whole thing, and then they sent out the script, and then that's how I got in contact with a few different reps, and then eventually signed with one.
I'd say at Harvard, they have a contest through Harvard Wood, and that was very helpful for me too, meeting a lot of people.
Yeah, it's like if your school does stuff, like, or if
that's the advantage of college.
Yeah, take advantage of like the networks that you have, because like it's either the big contest or it's the ones that have like a smaller pool with a payoff of connections, which tend to be like contests like local festivals or like your school or things like that.
That's a good question. How often should we read bad screenplays in order to see mistakes versus good screenplays? So if you read a lot of screenplays, unfortunately, you will never, ever have to seek out bad screenplays. Right? You know, also, like, I don't necessarily see, there are bad stories versus are very undeveloped stories. Bad screenplays, it's more of like in process. It's sort of like I can tell instantly if this is somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. Like, I can tell within half a page. I have read, and especially in screenwriters, I've read like lots of student submissions, a lot of people starting out and, you know, trying to figure out their voices, trying to figure out their story. That doesn't mean that, oh, I think it's for your sake in terms of developing and getting better. It's more useful to know what to do than to think about what not to do, because you're just going to have a sense of what not to do already.
Here's my hot take. Ready? I say there's no benefits to reading bad screenplays.
Yeah, I agree.
I would say there's none. The only thing that I would say that there is a benefit for is if you are in like a writer's group, or you're working with a writer who's trying to improve their screenplay, and you're reading their screenplay and there's things that not working, and you're actively trying to figure out why and help and like evaluate the story and figure out what's going on and like help them fix it. That is helpful. But just simply like reading things that are broken and then saying, oh, that sucked.
The conversation I have with the person after the fact is always more beneficial and interesting than just reading a screenplay that doesn't work. It's the conversation articulating with the person, like understanding, like, why did they make that decision? You know,
like, what are they trying to do? Yeah. That's been like, I mean, I think that for Adam and I too, that's been like one of the most helpful things in us figuring out how to talk about this stuff, is reading scripts that aren't working, but technically we're like hitting some beats that are correct, and then figuring out, okay, well, what is it and how do you articulate what exactly is going on?
So, Thomas, I've got some, the answer is whatever's on the blacklist last year, you should read. But in terms of like ideal, like really hard-hitting great screenplays, I always, for people who are just starting out, I tell them to read the Whiplash screenplay, just because it's so clean and it's so entrenched in point of view in a strong way. Like it really works, and it has very like vivid language. It's very in your face. It communicates, and it has great dialogue and great characters. It's a great example of an idea executed well. The Breaking Bad pilot is also.
That's mine. Sorry. That's the one I say, Adam.
You do that. I said Whiplash. You said. You don't even like Breaking Bad.
I don't even. That's the thing, though. You read the script and you're like, Jesus Christ, I hate this.
Yeah, no, that's how good it is. It's if you don't even like the show, it's still a great pilot.
Yeah, it's fantastically written, and you read it and you're like, oh my God. Like, that's like one of the cases where you read that and it's a little bit daunting, because there's just the author voice is so it's daunting and it's exciting, because the Breaking Bad pilot is one where it is Vince Gilligan's voice is so strong. Yeah. It is just like, I mean, it reminds me a little bit of Juno, like in that way, in that they like both have a very, very strong writer's voice that comes through in the narrative description.
Voice is the most important thing for breaking in. And that's the most frustrating thing to hear from somebody who isn't having that experience of like, you've been having scripts that have been difficult to read, and then people tell you, oh, voice. Well, what is voice? How do I get better voice? There's no screenwriting book on voice. What it means is personality and confidence.
Let me show you this. I'm going to do it just because. Insecure
screenwriters make bad screenplays. Often.
Bad news for me.
Right, hey. No. That's just hot. Yeah, let's look at this. This is great.
Here we go.
So this does everything I said not to do for a comedy. So look at this. But look how good it is.
Read it. This is what it's I know you want to. I know you saw this and you said, oh, I'm going to read this. I'm going to read this aloud. It's going to be great.
Okay, I need to zoom in on it a little bit here. Can you just send me the link privately? Sorry, it's just too small for me. Yeah, but like, I can tell you, this is the 1% of like people who can open with this. And also, it's an action scene. You know.
Jesus Christ! You read this and you're just like, oh, I freaking.
I'm gonna read the teaser.
Gilligan.
Exterior cow pasture, May. Deep blue sky overhead. Fat, scuddy clouds. Below them, black and white cows graze the rolling hills. This could be one of those California It's the Cheese commercials. Except those commercials don't normally focus on cow shit. We do. Tilt down to a fat, round patty, drying olive drab in the sun. Flies buzz, peaceful and quiet until zoom, wheels plow right through the shit with a splat. New angle, an RV is speeding smack dab through the pasture. No road in sight. Bit out of place to say the least. It's an old 70s era Winnebago with chalky white paint and Bondo spots. A bumper sticker with the Good Sam Club is stuck to the back. A Winnebago, the lumps across the landscape, scattering cows. It catches a wheel and sprays a rooster tail of red dirt. Interior Winnebago day. Inside, the driver's knuckles cling white to the wheel. He's got the pedal flat, scared, breathing fast. His eyes bug wide behind the faceplate of his gas mask. Oh, by the way, he's wearing a gas mask. That and white jockey underpants, nothing else. Buckled in the seat beside him lolls a clothed passenger also wearing a gas mask. Blood streaks down from his ear, blotting his t-shirt. He's passed out cold. Behind them, the interior is a wreck. Beakers and buckets, flasks, some kind of ad hoc chemical lab spill their nauseous contents with every bump they hit. Yellow-brown liquid washes up and down the floor. It foams in a scum around two dead bodies. Two freshly deceased Mexican guys tumble like ragdolls bumping into each other. Completing this picture is the blizzard of money. A Vaughn's bag lies leaking 20s, 15, 20 grand in cash, wafts through the air or floats in the nasty brown soup. Blows on the driver's eyes. He's panting like a steam engine. His mask fogs up until he finally can't see. Exterior cow pasture continuous. The Winnebago comes roaring over a berm and down into a deep gully. Too deep. Bam! The front bumper bottoms out, burying itself. Wah! The rear wheels spin air. The engine cuts off. Silence. The Winnie's doors kicks open and out. He yanks off his gas mask. He's 40 years old. Receding hairline. Tasty. He's not a guy who makes a living with his hands. He's not a guy we pay attention to if we pass him on the street. But right now, this moment, in this pasture, right now, we'd step the fuck out of his way. Underpants man looks at the RV. End of the line for that. He listens hard. Out of the silence, we hear sirens. They're faint. A few miles off, but growing louder. Our guy knows he's boned with a capital B. He holds his breath and leaps back inside the RV. Interior Winnebago continuous. Chrome 9mm clutched in the hand of one of the dead Mexican. Underpants grabs in his waistband. His unconscious passenger still strapped in the seat lets out a groan. Underpants leans past him, yanks open the glove box. He comes with a wallet, tiny Sony camcorder. Continuous. Outside, he starts breathing again. A short sleeve sweatshirt on a hanger dangles from the Winnebago's awning. Underpants pulls it on. He finds a clip-on tie in the pocket, snaps it to his collar. No trousers, unfortunately. He licks his fingers, slicks his hair down with his hands. He's looking almost pulled together now, at least from the waist up. All the while, the sirens are getting louder. Underpants figures out how to turn on the camcorder. He twists the little screen around so he can see himself in it, bring himself waist up. He takes a moment to gather his thoughts, then presses record. My name is Walter Haltrail, etc., etc. That moment where, anyway, but like this does everything we said not to do.
Oh yeah.
For an ideal comedy, but it's actually getting away with it for one reason. We're not saying that this is how you should open your screenplay, but we're saying it. This is what voice looks like, and when you have voice, you can get away with stuff. You can grab people.
So Vivian, this is the thing that sucks. Here's the advice that's not very helpful to hear, but is the truth. So Vivian said, would anyone perceive the confidence in voice and style as arrogant or over controlling if the writer isn't the director? If it's bad, then yes. And that's the sad, frustrating, but honest answer, is that it works when it's good. And if it's not good, then it's annoying. And that's kind of like, you know, it's a tough balance. Like doing this is a choice. If you do this, like you are saying, like, trust me, I'm going to take you for a ride right now. And you just need to like if you open this up and you saw this page, the reader is going to go.
My heart would sink and I'd be like, oh God, another one.
Yeah. The reader is going to go, oh, Jesus Christ. Like, I don't want to read this. And so you have that like first like 3 lines to convince us to be like, you know, maybe I can get through this. And so he puts a joke right at the top.
Yep.
Talking about it's the cheese commercials. And then he has these like the sounds pop in. Like there's a lot of style that like if this wasn't funny, if this wasn't action-packed, if this was just describing something like stagnant, we would never sit around for this page. Like it works when it's good. And it's tough. It's tough to know. And I think the only way to do that is to keep practicing it. And then like in general, doing things like this is very bold. Like most good scripts that you see are going to start with a lot of dialogue.
What you're looking at is a huge risk.
Yeah.
But I also think it's important to show because it's like sort of showing that like, you know, you can get away with stuff if it's, but the things you can't get away with. You notice how few adverbs are on this page?
True.
You notice how many fantastic verbs there are? How it focuses on clarity.
There's our favorite.
Yeah, galumph. What a verb. Holy shit. I know exactly. Like that's what he found the word for, you know, like
and
that's great
a rooster
writing.
tail of red dirt. You're just like, oh, I hate you. Like he's so good. And it's
great.
like it's really, really strong. And but it is a risk. But okay, so say you read this and you're like, I'm not ready to take this risk, like to open like this. That's completely
Let's show them Whiplash for a second, just the opening page.
Well, I'm just saying
later on,
like real quick before we jump to that.
Yeah, this is what I want to see, right?
Yeah, he still has like this voice. This voice doesn't go away after the opening pages. It doesn't go away once we start getting to dialogue, even though he starts using white space in a way that's more like even if it was this great the whole way through, if it was just straight scene description with no dialogue for the entire script, we would still get like it's not a novel. We would lose interest.
Yeah.
You know?
Like he does get to dialogue. And when the dialogue happens, it's captivating because the character is great. And like Walter White's flaw and inner need is so coherent and well realized. It's not confused. Just I don't want to go back to that, but like the more time you spend with him, the more you realize he feels like he's been passed up in life, and he's choosing to sort of take back. He's basically choosing to like validate his own, how should I say this? His desire for greatness. Right? Well, everything is about that, though. It's about like I'm going to save my family, but really, my idea of saving my family is becoming great.
So this is Whiplash. I don't think we have time to necessarily read
I don't want to read through it again. I just want to show, like, look how fast dialogue happens on the page.
Yeah. Immediately we're getting into it. This is another, like, amazing intro where, like, voice is still strong. It's just a different voice. You know, like
and in writing the scene, we actually read through the scene with Lexie, John, and I, and we actually analyze it a little bit. So,
yeah, like doing things like this. Andrew Naiman, it's pronounced Naiman, and then the fact that he's gonna get it like that, Fletcher's gonna get it wrong the whole time is gonna become notable later, and it's just like, yeah,
the conflict is in the scene. Like, it's like about bringing all these fundamental ideas together. But like, I really believe in the young screenwriters approach. I think if you write a scene knowing who your character is, like what is the flaw, inner need, what is the false belief of the character, like, and then knowing that, you go into a scene and being like, okay, what is the want, do, get of the characters? What's the midpoint of the scene where everything starts to accelerate? It just, how can I create want, do, gets that are mutually exclusive? Like, things write themselves when you think about this clearly.
Yeah, and I mean, like Bridesmaids, there's a reason that they open with what they do, which is just like completely like shocking, raunchy sex.
Cut my balls is where I'm like, okay, I'll read more.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
love your eyes,
do it on purpose.
Cup my balls. Like that is great. I mean, I'm not saying that that's the scene, the best possible scene to open it with, but like that tells you a lot.
In terms of like the screenplay is thrown on your desk, you'd be like, wait, what? You know, like it would compel you to keep reading at least for a little bit. Like it would pull you through for the next couple lines, and then you have to keep pulling people through. Normally you have to convince people to read until you're like 5 to 10 pages in, and then either you have them or you don't. But you got to like convince them to trust you in that beginning part.
I think a good rule of advice, if you want to like, if you're really struggling making readable stuff, I know we're almost done. Have a joke on the first page.
Mm-hmm.
Breaking Bad did it. Breaking Bad isn't common.
Well, like there's a reason why your opening image is so important, and like why your character introductions are so important. And the first time you meet your protagonist is one of the best opportunities that you're going to have to show us your voice as a writer, is by revealing how you choose to introduce your protagonist.
So I want to just share for a second before we go. I'm rereading a lot of Stephen King, and I was rereading the Dark Tower series, and the first sentence of the first of the Dark Tower is amazing. It's the entire story in a nutshell, actually. One sentence. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Like, oh, okay. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. It's how the opening sentence of the whole 5-book series, and it has the antagonist, the man in black, the protagonist, the gunslinger. What's the antagonist doing? He's fleeing. The protagonist is following him across the desert, the obstacle. Like in the first sentence, like it's all there, and that is the story.
Yeah.
All right.
So there we go. Honestly, so I hope that this was helpful. You know, when John isn't here, we get a little like into like the nitty gritty of pages.
Yeah, the movie was terrible. Sorry, I have to mention The Dark Tower, the movie with Matthew McConaughey and Idris Elba, is terrible, and you should not watch it.
That sucks.
The book
sucks. Hate when that happens.
I think it's because Stephen King is like an R-rated kind of guy, and they've tried to make it PG-13.
Oh.
And that just doesn't work energy-wise.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
No. Man. Well, so next week we are doing Looper, and Avi's coming to join us. So Avi is going to be here with us to help us break down Looper. But yeah, so to say it again, if you all want to see things, like if you want us to DM you some blacklist scripts, join the Discord and let us know. I don't think that's something we can just post, because I'm pretty sure people are trying to.
No, we can't. No.
So little, yeah. Anyway, and thanks for hanging out with us as we got into the nitty gritty. I guess
Looper is a great screenplay, by the way. I would also recommend that as an ideal screenplay to read.
Well, you're going to break it. Why don't you tell people what to look for?
Oh, I thought Avi wanted to break it. I can break it. Yeah, sure.
Oh, I don't know.
I can do it.
You or Avi.
One of us is going to break it.
What should people look for as they read? Like, why did you choose it?
I chose it because it's so clean, and he solves some really difficult problems. Like it's a very time travel. It's a time travel story. He solves some very confusing potential scenarios, but is always crystal clear what's happening. Like on the page, like in each moment, you were never confused about what's happening.
It's a good example of like how to build in, like sci-fi is very difficult to write and dodge exposition dumps, and this is a good example of like revealing information as it becomes relevant. I barely remember this film, so I'm excited to watch it again.
Yeah, is there anything exciting in March?
In March,
yeah. We're doing some cool stuff in the Discord. We're doing part of our writers group. We're doing I'll plug it here. In March, we're going to be writing with the community a series of sci-fi anthology short films in the style of Black Mirror and Twilight Zone, and that's just in our Patreon community. We just finished up a web series, so we're going to brainstorm a bunch of ideas. We're going to sign different ideas to certain writers and they'll give feedback on each other, and we'll sort of do a big reading at the end of March, early April. with John and everybody. We're going to read through all of the shorts that everybody comes up with.
So
that's happening.
To clarify with that, so we have a Patreon that's like called the Writers Room. And so we do projects in the writer's room with writers. Anybody can join who wants to. But I think there's a link in the description. But yeah, our big project of March is like a Black Mirror type thing. So if you want to come write a sci-fi short in that group and like, you know, get matched up with other people for feedback and do that sort of a thing, check it out. And yeah, we have we finished the first season of a web series together. That was the project before. And we're doing a reading on Saturday. Yeah.
Interesting. I'll say that. Yeah. It was cool to see a whole community come together with these characters, and it was interesting. So we're doing that on the Discord.
Decision that we did. It's like there's like 20 episodes.
Yeah.
By writers all over the world. And we figured out this comedy thing together, then broke it up, and everybody wrote an episode. And on Sunday, we're going to see how it all comes together, and going to act a little bit. And
so the sci-fi anthology project will be probably a little more self-contained because people aren't going to be continuing each other's story. But yeah.
So come check that out. And then in March, I think that we're going to announce all the different films soon. We're hoping to have a very cool guest.
We can't announce that yet, though, right?
No, we can't announce it yet. But we're hoping
very cool guest.
Yeah, we're gonna have a cool guest. It's just a matter of who, and I think that we've probably mentioned it before, so don't go watching back through the old videos. Anyway, but yeah, more on that next week. So we'll see you same time, same place for Looper. Don't forget to check out the links in the description, and see you then.
All right,
bye, everybody.